Dan, thank you so much for allowing us to come into your hometown and hang with you. Nikki mentioned a while back that we've got to do this interview with you because we did see the Anthony Bourdain piece where you were a part of, and then getting to know your story a little bit more deeply. It's like you're the commish, if you will, of Livingston, but you're known as Dangerous Dan. Oh my God, coming from the West, that must have been some pretty heavy work to get that kind of acclaim.
Well, I acquired that in high school when I was kind of a problem child. I was living in Manhattan, Montana, above my mom and stepdad's bar, and that would have been 1971. So there were some things you could get in trouble with around the area, and
within arm's reach.
Within arm's reach.
Well,
yes.
Just to warm up for this interview. With that, we were in the Murray's bar last night downstairs, and up on the wall, here's Anthony Bourdain's quote, whenever possible, drink heavily with the locals, whenever possible. And So I sat down and drank a bottle of Jack Daniels. But you were born here 68 years ago, 1955.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me about what you remember in those early years here.
Well, railroad was going big here. We had a build shop over here, electricians, whatever. Basically, Livingston was like halfway between Seattle and Chicago. So they needed a rebuild shop, wheel shop, electricians. There was 3,000 railroad employees down here. And
it was a railroad town.
It was just a railroad town, yes, sir. And so all the kids were mean. Fighting was a extracurricular activity, especially if you went to the east side. They were meaner on the east side than they were on the west side.
Wow.
Gangs, little gangs. Various families had 5, 6, 7 kids, and. And they were all mean.
So I think that's why your dad probably told you, if you're going to be a fighter, there are cheaters and losers.
Yeah, that was my grandfather.
So fighting was so prevalent.
Yeah, well, the kids were mean, and so you come home crying because you got your ass kicked, and your grandpa tells you there's only 2 kinds of fighters: cheaters and losers.
Right. Interesting. Why was the attitude so as you mentioned, mean? Why the discord must have been pretty big to have that kind of an attitude.
Well, you had the cowboy families.
Were they the meanest?
What's that?
Were they the meanest?
No, but it was just fighting was a sport. It was the James Dean era, the Marlon Brando, and was
right.
Those old black and whites where you had a little motorcycle gang or just tough guys out there.
Right. When did it become a Western town?
Well, it was always kind of a Western town, but it was
the big ranches
out there, and it was just a railroad town. There was 3,000 employees here probably when they closed the doors on it back in the day. It was probably a union breaking operation because there was so many people working down here. You could get a job with the railroad if your dad worked for the railroad. So then all the kids, and there was not enough to do for the amount of employees. So
right.
The only way they could get rid of them was to buy some of them out, the old timers, and then the younger ones had to move to Alliance, Nebraska or Burlington, Iowa, which was the next place they could go to work. So when they left town, everybody thought the town was going to dry up and blow away. And then more people, we had various people show up here.
It's similar to Aspen. Aspen was a mining town.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it became a ski town when the silver mines, people stopped mining and it became a ski area.
Yeah.
But also, too, it had a heritage of the Ute Indians in Aspen. And tell me about the history of the Indians here.
Well, this was Crow land,
Right.
and Shoshone drifted in here. We had the tribe of Indians that were down in Yellowstone Park were called the Sheep Eaters. They were a band of Shoshone, but this was mostly Crow land. And then, when the horse came, then the Blackfeet rolled in here, and Cheyenne and Nez Perce, and come to hunt buffalo. Nez Perce are on the over on the Idaho side for the most part.
Right.
And once they had the horse,
they could move.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise it was just.
God, it's just such big history when you come into Montana. When you hear the name Montana, what comes to mind for you, for a local that's been here for so long?
It's a place where everybody wants to come now. Yeah. With the advent of Yellowstone.
Did that change the game here? The TV series Yellowstone.
Well, River Runs Through It started it.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom McGuane.
No.
Well, Tom McGuane gave Redford the book.
Oh, there you go.
And then Redford produced the movie.
Right.
So Tom, as we mentioned just a couple days ago, is all his fault.
He was a great man, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. But that changed things. But what about, you say, the Yellowstone, the TV series?
Oh, with COVID, I believe there's been a mass migration of people moving out of New York. Why do I need to spend $5,000 a month for an apartment or whatever when I haven't worked where I've been working since COVID because can't go into the office or whatever? I can do it online.
Sure. I think all the West is seeing that. Aspen too.
Yeah. It's a migration from everywhere. People here go, or some people say, "Oh, California and California." No, they're coming from everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's when we drive through, across Wyoming to come here to be here this time of year to elk hunt, there's a sense of freedom that I feel. It's like this bigness. It's the land of the big sky. Obviously, yeah. That's what.
Right.
Its trade name is, if you will. But I think that I don't feel like the new West, like we feel in Aspen. I don't feel that here as much as you guys do, and you feel it because you live here.
Yeah.
COVID was one level of a new West.
Right.
Was there a level of the new West before COVID hit? Because I always hear people complain that Livingston is overgrown, it's toast, it's over the last 5 years. I've been hearing that.
Yeah, not necessarily Livingston, but Bozeman certainly.
For sure.
I mean, when I played basketball in Manhattan, there were 500 people living in Belgrade, and now there's like 15,000. And of course, my science teacher said, yeah, someday this valley's going to be all houses. Well, he's getting close. It's getting close. They're talking about it's possibly going to be as big as Boulder in 2050.
In Livingston here.
No, in Bozeman, in the Gallatin Valley.
Big.
And see, the Livingston, there's not a lot of places to build. We maybe will increase in the city limits maybe another 7,000 or 8,000, and then they'll be out of land,
space to build,
places to build. Because there's big ranches that conservation easements on the perimeter that they're not going to be able to. Of course, the contract's always been meant to broke. Ask any lawyer, right?
Oh God, it's. We are a fishing podcast, but we are a human interest podcast. Tell me about how, as a young man, you finally got into the fly fishing and became a guide, a steelhead guide up in the Olympic Peninsula, and you gravitated back to the Yellowstone, being a guide here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the early years of your fishing.
Well, my early days with a fly rod was a Wright and McGill fiberglass rod, and you just used it for a way to convey a night crawler, or a garden worm, or a grasshopper that you caught fishing 16 Mile with my dad and brothers. To catch brook trout, you just had a split shot and a size 6 eagle claw, and you just conveyed it out into the pool.
Sure.
And, that was my first so-called fly rod fly fishing. But so when I was in the 5th grade or 7th grade, well, when I was in the 2nd grade, my folks got divorced, so I kind of got bounced around. My dad got custody of me. I don't know how. My mom said that the lawyer had her sign some papers, and she thought that my dad bought the lawyer off anyway. He got custody of me, and of course, he was holding me for ransom, trying to get, back with my mom, and she wasn't having any part of it anyway. I was bounced around, lived all over the place, and when I was in the 7th grade, my dad's girlfriend owned the Murray here, and I had my own apartment. And so the places to hang out was Gill's Gift Shop, Dan Bailey's Lenford Taxidermy was just down the street. I was hanging out in Bailey's, and Dan Bailey took a liking to me and gave me my first fly rod, and we went down to the river, and he taught me how to fly fish.
And that was around 12 or so?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you were living here?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can't imagine what was your mindset when you're 12 years old, your parents are elsewhere, and you're living alone in this historical building.
Well, it was a stolen adolescence. I just had to make the best of it, and have work. I was the bellhop here. I learned to cook here in the kitchen, wash dishes, stocked and swamped the bar, had a paper route, just anything to make a little money. And with that money at the time, you could go to Dick's Pack Sack, which is a sporting goods store over here, and put money on a gun that you had on layaway. 22 rifle or little single shot Winchester shotgun or whatever, And
did you have anybody that took you under their wing as a 12-year-old, or were you just
kind of my brothers? But they were pretty mean to me when I started thinking on my own, and they were 11 and 12 years older than I was, so I was kind of the surprise of the family. They were surprised and they were 18, 19 years old, going to college, and so they really weren't around. I mean, I saw them in the summertime when they were out of college, but a lot of times I went and hung out with my dad in Sturgis, South Dakota, or Belvedere, South Dakota, when he was working on the interstate for the construction company he was working for. And I will add one thing, that there's not too many towns probably in America where you can get paid on Friday from your paper route and ride your Schwinn bike to the whorehouse to listen to the jukebox and drink a Coke with the girls before the shift change at the railroad or the bankers and lawyers showed up.
And that was your life?
Well, it was a teen center. Not many of us, but occasionally,
Sure. Interesting.
And, hang out in the sporting goods store. You couldn't go to the bar. There was no, foosball tables or pinball machines or anything that you could have fun with. You just had to make trouble or work.
Right. So when did the fly fishing part get help that you really dove into, and it became a big part of your life? Because that was 12. You were here for 12 years old. For how long?
Well, that was in the 7th. I spent 7th grade here at the Murray, and then 8th grade, I was living with my brother here in town, and I always fished a little bit right here in town, and we kept them. We ate them. I won't say that I was out there every day, but on occasion,
Right.
And then and I was in Corvallis, Oregon, my freshman year, and Burns, Oregon, my sophomore year going to school, and then my dad put me on a bus when on Christmas Eve in Ontario, Oregon. I wanted to go see my mom over in Manhattan. And 25 hours later, I arrived in Manhattan and just called my dad and say I'm not coming back. So my stepdad, he fished worms, and my fly rods had disappeared somewhere, like what Dan had given me, and so I was more or less a worm fisherman for quite a while then, and then moved to Washington and pillaged some of the last of the old growth on the steepest ground next to the Olympic National Park until 82, and then I moved back here and tried to cut some of this timber here, and it's that big out there and it's this big here.
Right.
So in between the mill ripping you off and the guy you were working for ripping you off, you were, making less than $100 a day. And so I had a friend, Mike Brady, who was working at Dan Bailey's, and we started fishing together. And I bought a rod and Dan was still alive. Dan was still alive, but not in the shop. John had taken over the shop. And Mike called me and he says, I'm going to go to work down in West Yellowstone. If you want a job, come and talk to John Bailey. And I thought, great. But in Washington, I just did what everybody else did, which is fished eggs or spoons or spinners or whatever. I had no reference. That was before the internet or,
right.
So I was just a bait fisherman, gear fisherman out there for them. And I had no idea that you could, even though I was fly fishing out there for smolts, and then occasionally I would catch a sea run cutthroat, but I see these, they're this big or they're this big.
Right.
There's not much in between. So, when I went and saw John Bailey, and we went over to Martin's Cafe and had coffee, and he says, tell me about your experience, blah, blah. And he said, well, you don't have much experience, but I'll give you a try. And I thought to myself, well, if I can sell a bag of horrible Mexican pot full of stems and seeds, grasshoppers and rocks, and make you think you're getting a good deal, I can sure as hell sell fur on a hook.
Oh, God. Well, you see, the Dan Bailey's, I remember I was in there really a long time ago, maybe almost like 50 years ago. I was new to fly fishing. We'd come up and fish the Madison. I went in there, and I was just like a little kid in a candy store with these big eyes looking at all these big fish on the walls, which replicated these big 10-pound browns that were caught out of the Yellowstone.
4 to 10, right.
Did you catch those quite often, those big fish, back in the day?
Oh, yeah, and they all lived on the shore. I mean, you catch them out in the middle of the river, too, but there were 5-pound rainbows eating PMDs next to shore. And try to hang on to them with your little Martin automatic that just gets tighter as the line goes out.
Right.
Blink, goodbye. So, the fish lived close to shore. And they still do on occasion, but there's so much traffic out there now that doesn't take long before those fish get
Are pushed into deeper water.
or they just go, oh, there's another Sri Lankan tide hopper. Last time I bit one of those, my mouth hurt. I mean, it's just way too much pressure compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that's everywhere. And I think we were with McGuane here a couple of days ago, and he was saying that they did a study, and they figured that every brown trout in the Madison has been caught 7 times per summer.
Yeah, it could very well be. There's so much pressure on the Madison; it's unbelievable.
Right. I also have
and they're fishermen. They're not. Our pressure comes from recreationists in Paradise Valley.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there can be over 100 watercraft in every 15-mile section of the river. Paddleboards, inner tubes, 5 sheet rockers from Belgrade throwing spoons, bouncing off the bank, no control, and they're just on and on.
So do you still fish?
Hardly. Yeah. I bought a jet boat, and I've been fishing walleyes in the Missouri River over by Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to fish the lower Missouri, fish the lower Yellowstone. There's drum, catch catfish on a fly, sight fish them. There's a drum there related to the redfish,
right.
Black drum.
Interesting. I never
smallmouth, walleyes, northerns, and seclusion.
Right. We were speaking with Ruoff last year, of whom lives over by Bozeman area, just on the outside. Mm-hmm. He was saying he just tries to fish all these little creeks on private property and get permission,
right.
and go fish areas, where there's nobody else that are fishing.
Right, and that's what I do. If I'd go and fish various small streams, and either the stream access law or I know the people that own the land, or knock on the door, and back in the day it used to be everybody used to let you go fish
wherever you wanted.
You knock on, sure, go ahead, and hunt, and
So the stream access law, that was 1985. It came into play.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, how did that change the dynamics of fishing with the ranchers, the people who owned the private property, and the public that wanted to walk up as far as they wanted to, as long as you stayed inside the high water mark?
Well, some people didn't. Some landowners didn't like it. I mean, a lot of them didn't care.
Right.
And then the land changed hands. A ranch that's been around for 75 years changed hands.
So the new owners.
What the one big problem is with people with a lot of money is they're worth suing, and they're scared they're going to be sued. So
Interesting.
Trespass, and this state law, even if you sign a waiver that you won't sue, you can still sue if you break your leg, step in a badger hole or fall down in the creek, I mean, you could still bring a lawsuit, which is ridiculous some people are sue happy and some people are scared to be sued. But I find that a lot with hunting, you'll ask somebody to hunt, and they'll go, if you fell down out here or got hurt, you could sue me. I just have to shut this off.
Mm-hmm.
Which is it's interesting. I never would have thought of that until it was mentioned to me. That.
How do you feel about all this as an outfitter? You've been.
I was an outfitter.
You were an outfitter.
Yeah.
You guided on the river. You guided hunting. You were our hunter.
Yeah. Bird hunts.
Bird hunt. Mm-hmm. Did you ever big game hunt?
My brother had a big lease down by Melville, and we hunted antelope and deer, mule deer. That's all that was there, and birds. But yeah, it kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. Big game hunting, because it's like a lot of them. It's just an excuse to get away from their wives and get drunk, and they can't walk the 50 yards up a hill to lay down and shoot an antelope that's 100 yards away, but they can shoot it in the ass and the guts running, then you got to clean up that mud. I feel over the years, I just feel this remorse for these animals.
Because people don't take, the hunters that you've experienced that are coming here to hunt have not taken, the sport to heart.
Well,
The integrity is not, it kind of is aside because they just take it for granted. They've got a rifle, they're going to be able to kill something,
right?
So they don't practice.
Right, and then they, well, a lot of them just, I'm just taking the horns. You want this meat, or which is fine. I mean, it feeds me,
Right.
but you should have the respect for that animal too.
Yeah, absolutely.
To take it home and cook it up. Even though you're going to fry the shit out of it, and it's not going to be worth eating.
Right. Don't know how to cook it. It's too
Right.
gamey. Well, you didn't know how to cook it and prepare
it
it.
tastes like liver and it's tough. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
I mean that's a good segue to your culinary, expertise, because obviously you expressed some of that with Anthony on the show.
Yeah.
And you learned that you first got tapped into cooking, and your interest really was kind of sparked here at the Murray Hotel, if I'm not mistaken, in the kitchen here.
Right.
At what age were you, and what was it that pulled you, that gravitational pull to really good tasting food?
Well, let's see. After I left Bailey's, and I was guiding fishermen, and then I got into the bird hunting thing, and guiding bird hunters. I was able to take the winter off and raise my stepson and son. So had PBS, and they had great chefs of the world and great chefs of America. I get my pen out. It was before the internet. And I'd write down these recipes, and I started getting cookbooks, and had a lot of game. So I'm not a chef because I didn't go to school, so to speak. But my mom was a steakhouse cook. She owned a couple steakhouses, and I cooked these steaks and chicken and shrimp and whatnot. So I had some experience there. But when you have a lot of game and you might want to do something totally different with it, or make it, especially like birds, I just, for the most part, I make stews out of the shanks and pozole out of the neck of an animal, and then, steak and burger. So I just fry a steak when I want a steak, and, make a stew, or,
Sure.
Cooking game birds, there's all kinds of different ways and to make them, except there was one thing I couldn't get. It was called a truffle. Now you can get a truffle in
Sure.
from Italy, FedEx, and for $1,000 a truffle, whatever, but some of these old like when I worked at Bailey's, I picked up a cookbook from a Louis de Goy or something like that, and he had all these game recipes in there, from hare to bear to birds and whatever. It was put out by Dairydale Press, and so I'm going through, and I'm, let's try cooking a pheasant this way, rather than just frying it.
Have you ever thought about pursuing it professionally and becoming a chef at a restaurant, or would that ruin the passion?
I don't want to work that hard, Andy. I'm 68.
Well,
I don't want to make too much money and screw up my Social Security. No.
Well,
no, I might do a private party or do something like that. Now, I do roast pigs. I've got a China box, and I roast whole suckling pigs.
Mm-hmm. Didn't you have something to do with a pig with Frederick Stevers or something?
Oh, yeah. He was just here for my birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the story goes, I didn't know if you guys knew each other very well, but he reached out to you, and I think he was on the river fishing. You were going to meet later that night, right? And his phone died, and you kept calling him about that evening.
Yeah, that was last year.
Was that last year?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And tell me if this is right or not, but he gets off the water. He finally gets his phone recharged and calls, or you text him, I'm over this bullshit, you're on your own or something like that. Tell me about that story.
Well, I just got frustrated because I wanted him to be there, and
you couldn't find him.
Couldn't find him because his cell phone died, and it's just, some people, the watch is only as good as the person that's winding it. Right.
And you just said, "Don't call me. I'm over this bullshit." Right?
Yeah, and then we made up after that. Of course, alcohol. That Indian was talking, or the Irishman was talking.
Yeah, that was a great statement you made. I'm an Irishman, but the Indian can't handle it. Right? Tell me, one of the things
he's actually going to be here this weekend.
Is he?
Yeah.
He's
coming up with his
wonderful
boy.
guy. You said, and I think that the tagline was "Good luck with your mug paintings and stuff," or something like that. Frederick, we all love you. I just had to throw this in. I've always been interested in the collection of writers here. When you drive into Montana, it's where authors and fishermen meet. And you had this really eclectic group of guys with McGuane, Harrison, Chatham, Valdine, from afar.
Yeah.
And Harrison was a great chef, and I know that, and Chatham too. I think Chatham had a restaurant here, so
Yes.
it was a great melting pot of fishermen and writers.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that generation and your relationship with them.
Well, I saw him around in the 70s, and we considered them to be aliens or narcs. Here's this painter with a bent nose and here's this one-eyed Mexican or Indian, little stubbed off guy with Tom McGuane, who, in those days we just kind of stayed away from them, because they were new to town and
they're big-time celebrities.
We didn't know who they were or what they did,
but they had a big presence, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they were famous.
Yeah, well, not to anybody here in those days.
Right.
Okay.
But they knew of their fame.
Jimmy was just a poet.
Right.
Okay. Starving poet.
Just a poet, right?
Just a starving poet laying blocks and doing whatever in the early days until Tom wrote Rancho Deluxe, which was filmed here.
And that's what really, I think, brought a lot of the Hollywood people here.
Didn't
Sam Peckinpah end up here because of
Tom?
Because of Tom and
maybe
the Western movies?
Maybe it was connected to Rancho Deluxe, but those guys started showing up. Peckinpah, I didn't know about him until later because he was living here in the Murray when I came back from Washington. See, I missed those from 75 to
the early
82.
Right, you're at that early push.
Right, and of course I was living in Manhattan, so I was only over here just back and forth. And you saw him, but you didn't know him. You didn't
know how to get inside.
Yeah, the people I knew didn't know them.
Was there like some sort of a moat, of an energy moat around them where they just stuck together and it was hard to get inside?
They partied together and they knew a few people around the town, but McGuane was living on Deep Creek and Bourdain was living in Pine Creek and they were basically partying there. Occasionally you would see him in the bars.
See, that's why I drank that bottle of Jack last night. Yeah. I had to get into the spirit
spirit
of things.
Somebody might have walked in that right?
How'd you get into the inner circle?
Well, I knew Peter Fonda probably before I knew Peter and Russell.
Mm-hmm.
When I came back, I was hanging out with Russell and Peter Fonda and let's see, I'm not sure where I didn't see much of McGuane in those days, and Bourdain, I don't know if I think he was already back somewhere else, but Peckinpah was living up here, and didn't see him. He was, doing cocaine and a couple bottles of vodka a day and shooting holes in the woodwork. And
the holes are still here.
in the
Peckinpah room.
No,
right?
they took those
covered.
out, and they took the bullet holes out of the ceiling. They fixed that.
Why? Right?
Because they could. Yeah, I mean
that's history.
Holes in the door casing and in the doors. Yeah, that's all
Was
gone.
it pretty wild during those years? Or were just a couple individuals were wild?
Well, I mean, I believe it was pretty wild as long as Tom was drinking. And then when Tom quit drinking, which is he had to because he needed to,
right, for
his health, and he lost his brother, I believe, and he was able to quit, but the other guys were not all that, I wouldn't say wild. They were wild in Key West.
Right. We did cover that. One of the things that you always, for myself, I was always very interested in all these guys. I didn't read all their books. I had a hard time understanding some of the stuff that they were writing.
Yeah.
And as McGuane said, I was writing for the Illuminati, the people that were also writing at a very high level. Mm-hmm. So they're writing for each other, and the common man couldn't understand what they were writing. Yeah. And in Tom's later books, he said, I started writing for the common man that could understand what we were doing.
Right.
But I'll never forget, I don't know if you read the book, Russell Chatham's book, Dark Waters.
Absolutely.
How about that chapter? So Russell's in a studio in San Francisco or somewhere, and somebody had killed a bunch of birds, and they were going to have a big bird fest and a wine, pairing the wine with the birds and going to great ends, as you understand, to make this great culinary dish. Mm-hmm. And so he's in, I'm sure you remember, that chapter in the book, but he's in a gallery and he sees an old love that he used to hang with, and she really wants to engage with Russell. And he's juggling birds, my buddies, and wine, or this woman that was to hang with him on that Friday night. And he chooses the weekend to be with his buddies because they've spent all this time collecting the meat and all the ingredients of a great food fest. And at the very last paragraph, he's all fucked up in a hammock, and he says, "Oh, only if her tits were in my face."
Oh, what's that?
Only if her tits were in my face, right?
Yes.
I just love the spirit about the West, Montana and Key West and those guys so much. And you eventually ended up spending a lot of time with Harrison in his later years.
I was working at Bailey's. I'd kind of had enough of that project. I needed a change in my life, and so the year before I left Bailey's, Jim's daughters and son-in-laws and children, grandchildren, one grandchild, they were living here. Anna was living in Bozeman, and Jamie and Steve were living here in Livingston, and Jim was coming out to spend a couple weeks in September with Linda and needed somebody to take him fishing for those 2 weeks every day. So I took my 2-week vacation from Bailey's right when he was coming, and Russell had recommended me, and so he got a hold of me, and we met for breakfast, and I had an English pointer in the truck and a drift boat, and we fished for 14 days every day. And Jim says, I'm coming back next year. I want to do the same thing, but I'm bringing my bird dog. So for 10 or 12 of those years, maybe 15, he was living in Michigan, and then the kids got old enough, or 10 years, I guess it would have been. And then they sold the farm cherry farm in Lake Leelanau and bought a place here and moved here. So we got to fish and bird hunt for the rest of the time until he passed. And then, so yeah, about 27 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was kind of his gopher, so to speak. We would fish, we would go on road trips, we would hunt. I drove the extra car back and forth from here to Patagonia, Arizona, and in the fall, and then fly down and drive the car back in the spring. And
wow,
yeah,
you did a lot with him.
I spent a lot of time. Yeah, one year we fished 70 days.
Wow. Was he cantankerous in any way?
Well, when he pretty much quit Hollywood and not quite the money was coming in, he got a little crabby.
Was he abusive?
Very. Yeah. The one daughter told me that he could have 1,000 women in an auditorium that that love him. And in one sentence, he can have them all weeping and running for the door. Yeah.
That's what great.
He's quite a wordsmith.
Yeah, for sure.
Of course, when you read his stuff, he can say more in a sentence than a lot of people can say in a paragraph.
Right. I found him hard to understand. I don't know if I have bad hearing, which I'm sure I do a little bit, but
in that nasally monotone.
Yeah. Was it hard to get the hang of?
He was kind of a low talker, and he mumbled a bit. And
Nikki does a great impression of him.
A nasally monotone.
Yeah, give us.
On the microphone.
Have you seen the new Tarpon film? The new rendition of it.
Oh, sure. I've seen the old one too.
The old, yeah, for sure. I love how they end that film where McGuane is reading a poem that Harrison has written, and then in the middle, Harrison starts to read it about Antelope Hill.
Yeah.
Do you know much about his relationship with Antelope Hill?
No. Antelope Butte.
Antelope Butte, yeah.
Well, yeah.
So what's that all about?
Well, it's a big limestone outcrop that was right behind his house, and there was a snake den behind there, and it's on the dry side of the mountain, so there's not much as far as timber. There's a bit of sagebrush and open grass mostly. Just goes up right behind his house. Yeah.
Was it hard as far as his abusiveness to you? Was it hard to stay connected, or did you ever want to bail?
Well, I did. I fired him at one point and hooked him up with guides that would take him fishing, and he went through 3 of them, and all 3 of them said, he's never getting in my boat after one trip. And he finally hooked up with Callan Wink. And Callan Wink was he was born in the same and lived in the same area as he did, Michigan, and they got to talk writing because Callan's a writer. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not.
I'm not. No.
He's got a couple novels and wrote some stuff for Angler's Journal and New Yorker, and he's also a fish guide, fish pimp.
Do you feel, having known these guys for so long, and with the sign entering town where writers and anglers meet, now it's like McGuane's the last cowboy standing.
Yeah,
because a lot of them, they're gone.
Yeah,
McGuane or
Valdine, all of the old guys are gone.
They're all gone.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because you were a member of the tribe.
Well, I guess I need to start writing, I guess I need to start publishing. I've got plenty written. Yeah, I've got a memoir going. If I can ever be in the right frame of mind to finish it.
Right.
It's titled My Life and my life with Jim and Linda Harrison, and basically my life, and then there's several chapters of Jim and Linda and Guy Valdine and Peter Matheson, so there's a little memoir there. Yeah, I wanted to name it 25 Years with a Feral Songbird. My life with Jim Harrison.
Well,
I called him a feral songbird, and he goes, Danny, I love that. That's what I am.
Tell me about that whole segment when Bourdain was in Montana, and you guys were hanging.
Yeah, well, he was here the first time, and that was basically just set in Livingston and the surrounding area. And the producer called me and said, we want to do this, and this. And, well, see, Jim had put Tony off because Tony wanted to come out when we hunted. And Jim was... He professes that he walks 15 miles, or I took him on a death march or whatever, but he maybe walked a half a mile round trip.
It's like my dad.
It's like me.
Carrying the gun. Okay, he just kind of shuffled, and
That's me.
And so he was so they came out in the spring. They came out in May. End of May, and he wanted to go to Yellowstone Park and ride horses, set up a tent, see a grizzly bear, whatever. There was 7 feet of snow up in the park. I said, that's out.
Right.
I was the fixer for the first show. Well, we want to do this, we want to do that. Okay, we want to go fish and et cetera. So, so I took him fishing. I wanted to fish the river and pick morels. Well, the morels were not that abundant, and the river was running at 15,000, 18,000 cubic feet a second and brown, so forget floating and fishing the river. So I took him to a lake, and the first fish he connected with he broke a few off, but the first fish he landed was like a 4-pound plus brook trout.
Wow.
Male.
Wow. Big kite.
Beautiful. The money shot.
Right.
Okay. And the editor / producer wanted this 1.5 pound rainbow that jumped out of my hands as the picture fish. And I was pissed. To say the least. I said, here's the money shot, right? I've never caught one that big, anyway. So
it's amazing how producers get in the way of a great picture.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with this genre and this environment.
Right. I mean, she was from New York, whatever. And so I had a couple stunt fish because he wanted to eat a fish.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you couldn't keep them up there, It's only catch and release. So
stunt fish. Tell me about your stunt fish.
So I had a brown trout that I kept, and then a nice whitefish to show him the difference. A lot of people think, oh, whitefish, suckers, blah, blah. They're great fish when the water's cold. Yeah. Just like a trout. Water's warm, they're not worth eating. 75 degrees in the river, whatever. So there was a big squall line went through, and I had 2 cast iron pans on a Coleman stove, and the wind came out of that and damn near blew that stove out. I had to grab it, and I go, yeah, that's a 3-pan wind. I had these big cast iron pans, and so there was there's a shed over there, and of course there were 7 million flies in there. So we opened up the doors and got the flies out and set up the stove, and I whipped out a knife. It was a Gerber Mini Magnum, and And Tony says, "Is that a Gerber Mini Magnum?" And I said, "Yeah." And we started trading lines from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, you know.
Oh,
like
beautiful.
Your dead grandmother crawling up your leg with a knife in her teeth, you know, Lucy in the Sky with that. And from that time on, we just hit it off.
It was magic, yeah.
Yeah, it was magic. But when he was in the boat, he was tense. He was standing like this on his tiptoes and whatever. And there was a male yellow-headed blackbird in the cattails, just maybe 30 feet away, you know, with this raucous mating call. And after he relaxed, after he caught that fish and kind of relaxed, I said, and he goes, "What the hell's that noise?" And it had been going on for like an hour. I said, "That yellow-headed blackbird." And he goes, "Where is it?" And it's sitting high and mighty on top of a cattail. I said, "Right there, Tony." And then I explained to him how people from the big cities, how they lose their senses. You know, they don't see anything, they don't hear anything. The only real sense they have is their taste and their smell walking by a restaurant or whatever. You know, you shut everything out when you're in that land of concrete and steel, asphalt. You know, and he goes, I said, "Look around." You know, and he sees that squall, you know, whatever. And he turned back to me and he says, "You know, you're right." He said, "You know, my senses have been," I said, "that bird's been over there talking for an hour and you didn't even notice it."
Right.
You know?
I think one of the most magnifying sounds are the sounds of a river.
Yes. Yeah.
I live on top of a mountain in Aspen, so I'm really a view guy. People talk about the view of an ocean, but I gravitate to the high mountains. But when I'm on a river, I love going to a river before hatch begins, and just listening and watching to the river move and the sound of a river.
Yeah.
But the Yellowstone is a big river. What kind of sound does that river have versus more of the Boulder River or a smaller creek?
No, you really only have any sound when you're going through a riffle or when you crash into a rock. Those are the only, you get out in those big pools, you don't really,
it's kind of quiet.
Don't hear much, but you know, it all happens in the riffles where the water speeds up and runs over those rocks. Yeah.
And you've been a great river guide for a long time.
Yeah, put some time in.
Yeah, what's it like? What kind of fear is there taking a drift boat down a big rapid when you're fishing, and it can be dangerous? And obviously, you've had those experiences.
Well, see, I learned to row out there on the Olympic Peninsula. Okay, and the river's ever changing. You know, as the water's dropping, so you can't. And you're going through half-mile boulder fields. You know,
they change every day
with flow,
right.
And that are constantly changing. So you can't. You're pulling in behind a rock and seeing where your next rock is. You're going to pull in behind. I mean, you constantly.
So you're pulling aside and hanging out in an eddy,
reading the water where you can go, where
Wow.
you can weave down through these boulder fields. You know, and it's pretty intense out there. I mean, the Madison, it's a little bit like the Madison,
right?
You know, where you got these boulders, you got to read your water where you're going. You can't be looking around at the mountains or, you know, drifting off thinking about your girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. Do you like drift fishing more than wade fishing?
Well, on a big river, yeah. You know,
you just cover more water.
You just have to be in a boat on the Yellowstone. I mean, I occasionally will go out and fish, wade fish. You know, throw a streamer on it. I haven't in a couple 3 years. My shoulders bother me a little bit. You know, and throwing a shooting head. See, it used to be. I used to have old fishing clients that came every year. Sometimes 3 times a year, you know, and they would come in the spring, and they would come after high water, and then they would come and wade chest deep and throw shooting heads for brown trout. And all those guys are dead or don't do it anymore. I mean, this is back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, and these were old salt fishermen, from coming from Florida, coming from Wisconsin, trout guys. And then kind of when a river runs through it happened, then you had a lot of people with waxware and Patagonia and expensive rods, and I say, well, how was that cast? And try getting it past the oar next time, and I found that women were easier to teach than men. Men want to do it like a hammer, and a woman does it more like an art,
Mm-hmm.
And we used to teach them how to fish a dry fly. Now, a bobber and a nymph down the gut. Just get it past the oar, and I'll roll away from it. And I'll show you how to slack out the rod tip, and which is good because it leaves the dry fly fisherman able to catch fish over near the shore.
Right.
But I just, and all the new guides, that's the way they do it. Just a bobber and a nymph. Sometimes they long leash it in shallow water, and they go, oh, you missed 50 fish. You're just been a little bit late, because your fly's catching a rock, and the bobber goes down, and there's nothing there, right?
Right. Yeah, right.
Make them feel good.
Yeah. A lot of the guides, old guides in the Keys, only fish old clients that they've had forever.
Yep.
So they may only fish 10 different people throughout the entire year.
Right.
Was that similar to how you guided up here?
Well, no, you couldn't make a living doing that. You had to be a piece of meat at the tackle shop, I'll take that one, I mean, you felt like you were at a bordello.
Did you hate that?
Well, I mean,
You had to make a living.
You had to make a living, and when sometimes you get a client that haunts your dream life long after the season's over.
That's a good way to put it.
Your dream life's all you really own.
Did you ever have a chance to go and fish the salt down in the Keys, tarpon and stuff like that?
Sure, yeah. Your buddy Clyde,
Mm-hmm.
I went down and fished with Chris Klingel at Homosassa.
For sure.
Okay, and he showed up there, and he goes, there's no fish here. We need to be in Boca Grande. I says, how long does it take to get there? He said, he hadn't even unloaded his boat. And I think he was a little frustrated he had to come up there. Apparently, he owed Clyde a favor. Okay.
Yeah, so Clyde Balk is, for our audience, he was a big tarpon fisherman. He was a world record chaser. He had the 12-pound world record at one point, which was a 180-pound tarpon.
Was it? I thought it was 166, but I could be wrong.
He ended up...
He beat Malzone's 165, but
right.
I'm wrong.
And then I think he had one close to 180.
Oh, did he? On 12?
On 12,
oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And then Evans broke that record with a 194.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we drove to Boca Grande, set up at across from the schoolhouse. There's a daisy chain, fourth cast. I'm into an 80-pounder. First time fishing for bigger tarpon. Now I've been to Mexico.
Campeche, fishing for the babies.
Catching babies out of Cancun through Trek back in, 83 or 84, I think it was.
Right.
Charlie Waterman set me up with that. And, caught babies and, some dink bonefish. That was the only saltwater besides fishing for halibut and, on the Pacific coast.
Did that 80-pound tarpon that you caught with Klingel, did it make you like, I want to do this for the rest of my life?
I thought, you see the fish, you make a cast, he eats it, he jumps, runs, jumps again. Yeah. It's kind of like the first steelhead.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I want to do. And then
Because a lot of Montana guides over the years have started splitting the season. The summers are here.
Yep.
Then they run down there for February, March, April,
Right.
the tarpon season, and they come back up here. Did you ever have any aspirations to do that yourself?
Well, I had a child that I needed to raise.
So you needed to be here.
You know, so and then I got divorced when we were when he was 8 years old, and I just I turned down setting up a fly tying operation in Bhutan
Wow.
because
Had to be here.
I would rather be here. Now I tried to start a fly tying operation in Costa Rica, couldn't find the people to help me out, and then a couple of years later somebody did it. And that's a little bit closer than the Bhutan thing, once I got it set up, whatever. Kind of thought about it, but
Your hands were tied here.
I just wanted to be with my son,
Yeah.
and who's going to feed the dogs?
Yeah. They're talking about fly tying. Dan Bailey's had a bunch of women tying flies in the front window for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Is that correct? Tell me about that era.
Well, that's when the railroad was here. A lot of, and there wasn't a lot of work for women. Bailey started it, and, at one time there was, 25 or 30 tires that tied right at the shop. And then they started staying at home and tying them, taking care of their kids, et cetera, and they would bring in their orders, like 12 dozen, size 12 Royal Wolves,
Right.
whatever, and
So it was a local operation.
Local operation, making, and the girls enjoyed it and made money.
Oh, that's cool.
And of course, you get that many women in one place, there's always can be a little bit of a cat fight, whether it's just a look or some verbal exchange or whatever, but most of them got along pretty good. But when I started there was only, I think 6 or 8 tying there. And then there was, Red Monocle's wife, Louise, she did all the dyeing of the materials and materials. They sold a lot of materials there, so George Anderson out here, he had all these nice flies by Renee Harrop and all these other great fly tires, Spring Creek fly, beautiful, and then you look at what's being tied at Dan Bailey's, like a Comparadun, for instance. It had like 4 pieces of elk hair sticking out and microfiblets that weren't, sticking out for the tail, and just a gob of fur on the hook, and you go, well, it worked. It was the perfect thing for what they call now a cripple.
Right. Yeah, right.
Spent, but you get a Comparadun that's sticking up, got that beautiful, just perfect. And I went back and mentioned that to one of the tyers, and she goes, "Look, you little son of a bitch, I've been tying for 25 years. Don't tell me how to tie a fly." I just asked her to taper the body.
Right.
So I ran to the other room.
Oh, that's so funny.
But the Department of Labor showed up. I don't know if somebody ratted the operation off or whatever, but the Department of Labor showed up, and she goes to John, "I'm about ready to take you to court on or fine you or whatever on 3 or 4 counts of unfair labor practices." Because they were, and she sits down next to a lady tying a Royal Wolf with a stopwatch and makes her nervous and figures out that he's paying less than minimum wage.
Yep.
So then they had to start punching a clock. Pretty soon he couldn't afford, and everything now is coming from wherever.
I mean, it's really cool to see these generations that are no longer with us, because it was just so grassroots. It was just so simple.
Yeah. Yeah, things used to be simple.
Yeah, I was when I was 13 and 14, I used to tie flies for Chuck Fothergill in Aspen. He had a store called Fothergill's, and then George Odier had it. And so I played. I went through that, that transition of learning how to fly fish a little bit, learning how to tie my own flies, time for the store for my allowance, because I didn't, I wanted to be on the river and I wanted to tie flies, but then I had to make more money, so I became a landscaper. But when you go through like a small town like Livingston and you look back, like a small town of Aspen back in 1960 when my family moved there, there's only like 1,200 people, and now look at it, it's almost like the sauce is gone, the real spice of what made us who we were back in the day.
Things have become gentrified.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you don't mind, I'd love to talk a little bit about your chapter with the Green Machine and the FBI and the
Green Machine.
Did you have a green machine? Did you drive a green machine? Wasn't that a vehicle that you, right, Nikki?
No.
Well, let's just make it up.
I'll read you a poem.
But I was told to ask you about the FBI in Belgrade.
The FBI.
FBI, yeah.
In Belgrade.
Yeah.
Might be an urban legend. Might be a.
When you were, I don't know if you were like selling.
Oh no, that was in Three Forks.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well,
we have to dip into that a little bit. Dangerous Dan is still alive and well.
Yeah, maybe on the other side. Yeah, I was living in Three Forks, tending bar. Oh, maybe it's up here. There you go. Thank you. I was living in Three Forks, tending bar at my mom's steakhouse. And I was dealing a few drugs out of the bar. And the deputy sheriff at the time, I met this girl. She was from Canada, and she was tending bar at the Sacagawea. And we got together, and one day I was upstairs in my apartment, which was next door and above the Frontier Club. I looked across and at the Ruby Theater, defunct, Ruby Theater's defunct, but it's still there. The sign, the marquee, and the neon. And I see these suits getting out of, two exactly looking like cars with U.S. government plates, antennas, and I see them packing shit up the stairs. So I get my rifle and I'm looking through the scope over there above.
I think you're going to shoot them
above the Ruby Theater to see what it is, and I see these tape machines and cameras and whatnot. I go, oh, that's interesting. So anyway, that night, the deputy sheriff, I won't use his name, we used to poach deer out of the squad car with a spotlight, shoot skunks at night, smoke dope, drink beer, play poker together. He comes into the bar and he goes, you're being watched. The FBI's in town. I says, I gathered that. He says, you know what it's about? I said, no. He says, well, that girl you're with is supposedly read some letters that were en route from Chicago to Deer Lodge, and the mob's coming out to put a hit on you. And I'm going, what? So I got rid of her.
Immediately.
Anyway, nothing ever happened of it, but supposedly she'd read a letter that was stolen out of a motel room in West Yellowstone when she was there. And there was a robbery at some room, her and the guy she was with, and he was in jail, and she was supposed to have read this letter that was en route to Deer Lodge prison from Chicago mob or whatever. I find it hard to believe, but that's why they were there. Had nothing to do with anything else other than her.
The scary times of Dangerous Dan.
What about the cowboy hat? Is that true?
Do you shoot a hole in somebody's cowboy hat?
Wow, where are you digging this stuff up?
Right? Is that true?
Yeah.
It had to have been true.
Yeah?
It is.
Yeah. Bad check, Bob Teskey. Yeah. We were in the Ennis bar, and you know, he had all these, you know, he drank Great Falls beer, and it had pull tabs, and he had a chain of pull tabs
As a hat band.
right? And I had this pistol in a shoulder holster under my coat, and we walked outside, and he goes, you know, a hat's not a hat till it's got a hole in it. And I went, wham! front of the bar. Got in the car, ran off. I think we were on mescaline.
You know, also,
Where did you dig that up?
That was last night at the Murray Bar. I think it was
that was behind
Kyle and Perry Coleman. We were talking to them.
Yeah.
Oh, uh-huh.
It's amazing what you hear in the Murray Bar after a bottle of Jack with a bunch of fishing guides. What do you miss most about your life that has gone by?
Well, yeah, that's a tough one. You know, I guess mostly I miss my friends like Peter Matheson and Russell, Jim, Guy. Yeah, those were good times. Anthony.
Yeah. And it's so, and the timing that we have with this right now, you know, fall of 2023, Jimmy Buffett just passed, and some of your other buddies in the most recent future, you know.
Yeah.
I think sometimes too, what I miss is that golden era that we all went through where you could do a lot of things and get away with it.
Yeah.
You could push the envelope, you can push the edge, you can live freely and wildly.
Yeah.
And innocence was still a big part of our lives because we didn't know what was going to happen, but we dove in head first.
Yeah. When we used to have kegers, the cops would show up and just take the tap. We got to load the keg up in the trunk of the car, and then the next day you'd go get the tap back and start the party over the next day. You know, it wasn't like you were going to jail and calling your parents and.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't get away with that.
They didn't even have a law in the state for anything except for heroin. You know, he got picked up with a bag of dope. There wasn't even a law for it in the early 70s.
Yeah.
What was Bourdain like?
Bourdain was a wonderful human being. He just, you know, anytime I corresponded with him, you know, I had his email, and I would, you know, say, hey, Tony, you know, how's it going? You know, and I'm in Turkey eating lamb or something, you know. I mean, he always corresponded back. He liked me. He loved my son. The CNN episode that you saw, he immediately he called and says, I want your son to be my driver. He actually called me and says, what's Robbie doing? Can he get off during this week shoot? And so Robbie was his personal driver, made sure he got jiu-jitsu when there was, when he was in Billings or Butte or wherever they had a jiu-jitsu and and a couple months before he passed, I said I was watching, and his show, and I said, Tony, you look tired, and he goes, yeah, I'm just completely exhausted. But he's 250 days on the road doing that or whatever, and then speaking engagements on and on and on. And he was a year younger than I was. So, and we just hit it off. He had heroin and cocaine and the money to buy it there, and I had pot and psychedelics here. So we were like brothers. We played a CD for him, driving out. I was driving the van with everybody in it and had a CD player, and I made a mix of CDs, music, and one of them was a Blue Oyster Cult song, and they're from New Jersey. He goes, holy shit! He recognized it right off the bat, so. And he told me things that only knowing him for a few hours or, relatively short period of time, he was telling me things that I wouldn't be saying right off the bat to somebody I didn't know. Well, and here I am doing it now.
Yeah.
Right?
You just, what were some of the things that he was saying at that time that was so alarming to you?
Well, just about his exploits.
Yeah.
With
his
relationship
with
and
heroin
relationships with women and
he was an open book.
And he was an open book. You read his book, Kitchen Confidential, about waitresses in the walk-in and he was telling me stuff like that. It's already out there, but yeah.
What's the open book on Livingston and fly fishing from this point forward? How do you speculate the evolution of the Yellowstone River, of Livingston, fly fishing in Livingston, the history of fly fishing here? Because it's been so embedded for so long.
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, there was, or shortly before I knew about them, there were salmon flies all the way down to Columbus in certain
sections of the river,
fast water, aerated waters. Okay, when I was a kid right here in town, carcasses were stacked up on the cottonwoods right along the river. Okay, they're all gone. You don't get any salmon flies till you get way up the valley. So, and the water quality, you got a four-year insect, that's an indicator.
Right, because I saw that train that crashed into the Yellowstone River earlier this year with a bunch of toxic fluids in it.
That was asphalt. Okay, what's asphalt? That's oil, and it sinks to the bottom. It doesn't float on the surface. They want to. It's asphalt. Well, no, it's oil. Anyway, there's some problems down there for sure. But they're spraying a lot up in the valley, insecticides, herbicides, whatever. That's getting into the chain. I kind of conclude that the salmon fly, when everything up in the valley was flood irrigated grass or mustard or various different kinds of cow foods, and they brought in alfalfa, and they started sprinkling with wheel lines and whatever. You can't flood irrigate alfalfa, and then they spray it a lot for insecticides. I think that got into the chain and killed off the salmon flies in this part of the river.
So
you talk to a biologist, and he's saying that a trout that has salmon flies puts on about 50 to 60% of his food during that during that period.
Yeah, so that salmon fly is the canary in the mine.
Yeah, exactly. And then we had a flood in 96 and 97, and the caddis flies are, before that time you knew the caddis were out because they all headed from the river to the Neon. The river's just, half a mile as the crow flies. The town would be fogged with caddis flies. I haven't seen that since 95.
Wow.
And that's a huge food source. I mean, rocks used to have, when they just pick them off, rocks used to just be covered with caddis.
Right.
And you just see that these mats float, river turned is green, and then when they emerge, it's just brown with
caddis flies.
Yeah. So you don't see them until you get upriver, where, a lot has to do with riprap of the river. They put this in over here, and it changes the river, and it affects the guy on the other side of the river downstream, and back and forth. And, that's how the river needs to eventuate, needs to be able to spread out and channel and run wherever, and they're the landowners just getting the riprap, whether they're putting it in legally or illegally. Now, a number of people have been busted for illegal riprap. They've been fined. They got enough money to pay the fine, and if it's illegal, they should make them take it out.
Right.
But
they don't.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of great stuff, Dan. You've had a really big spectrum in your life. Your friends, things you've done, legally and illegally.
Oh yeah.
What?
Resist authority.
What's the future hold?
Well, I'm getting older. That's about it. Just a couple years short of 70. Just semi-retired. I'm still going to have to do a little work, but yeah, I've got a little bit of money, and I'm going to do some things on my bucket list. Like I want to catch another king salmon in this lifetime. Want to hook onto another tarpon with Captain Perry out of the Lorelei.
Yeah.
Yeah. My boy got one last year. We'll be going back down in February. Go down because, Perry's another one of my surrogate children, along with several other of these fish pimps around the area.
He's a great brother.
I feed them and wet nurse them when they have a problem with a girlfriend or whatever, and so I go down early with Perry, and it's early in the season, so he gives me a little discount. I buy all of his gas, all of his food. We stay at his house. I bring elk meat down, and we cook at the house, and then my boy and I go with him, and it's research and development.
Right.
So next year I'm bringing a 500 grain sinking line to catch those fish up there in the Cape that just come up and go down.
Go right back to the bottom. Just start dredging.
Just don't want to. Yeah. No, just kidding.
No.
But yeah, a few years ago, got a big mama that with Perry, and it's coming right at me. I threw the fly right there. I kept stripping. Fish disappeared and then ate it from here to that bag, basically a hip shot. Okay, goodbye. And anyway, I had it reeled up into the tippet in there twice. And then the fish finally took off and the hook broke, and he was fishing something like straight 40, just wanted to see, whatever.
Sure.
I tried to break it off, and it didn't happen. But finally the hook broke, and I said, hey, can I have a new hook?
Better put a better hook on here. Well, Dan,
So anyway.
it's been really a great visit, and thank you for spending your time with us and sharing your stories.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, so do we, because you are really a big part of the history of Western fly fishing in Livingston, and there's no better voice to, tell that story than yours. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right,
yes.
Is there anything else that you want to share with us, as we depart that we missed?
Well, a little Tony Bourdain story. When I cooked the 6 or 7 course dinner for him and Jim and him, whatever. We started off with these 2 bowls of vodka, okay, and I pan fried this real thin antelope liver, which I'd cooked for Tony before, and he and Chatham and Guy said it's one of the best things they ever put in their mouth. Just flash fry it in clarified butter, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, the other side, and then sprinkle some salt on it. I mean, the livers of an antelope is a totally different creature, so than anything else. Anyway, so from then we do the dinner and 2 bottles of wine. Jim drinks maybe about that much out of, in a glass out of each bottle, Tony and I. Okay, then Tony brings out for dessert this, 3 or 4 pounds of English Stilton cheese and this 40-year-old bottle of port. So Jim drinks a little bit of that, Tony and I drink that, and then we're going to go to the Mint and have the sit down in the Mint bar. And I'm shit-faced, and Tony's got to be close to it, but he's got a driver. I'm driving. So we get to the Mint, and I start drinking soda trying to sober up. I mean, I damn near fell asleep on the way, plus being drunk. And so Tony gets beer. He starts drinking beer. And a big point that the director of that episode was directed, rather than the other show that he had was just free for all.
Right.
He really wanted to talk about stream access and public hunting and stuff like that. And I'm thinking to myself, there's like 0.001% of the people that are going to get that from watching this show. What is that stream access? But he wanted it. Mm-hmm. So, and I tried to get it in while we were eating dinner, but between Harrison and Tony talking about their Hollywood, listening to Jim talk about his Hollywood exploits, and how am I going to interject? Hey, let's talk about stream access.
No.
So I told him I'd get it at the bar, and so we're talking, and he said, "Doesn't Ted Turner own some land around here?" I says, "Oh yeah, I got a big place over here. Does he have any water on that property?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Do you mean you could go to Ted and knock on his door and get permission to fish?" I said, "No, I'd probably have to go through the, ranch manager or something like that." He said, "Well, what would it take to get to fish Ted Turner's property?" And I said, "A pound of Matanuska Thunderfuck and a couple cheerleaders." And then I thought, oh shit, Ted owns CNN. But then I thought, well, everybody knows he smokes dope for glaucoma, and he's into young girls.
So it's a perfect.
Anyway, that didn't make the scene. Needless to say, it might make this one, but maybe not.
It's solid. It's solid, bro.
I thought Tony was going to flip off his chair. He's laughing so hard.
No.
And then anyway, when he was in Seattle, Tony emails me. He says, "I found some Matanuska thunderfuck. You're right, it's deadly." That's the stuff they grow in the Matanuska Valley and in Alaska.
Right.
Yeah, back before, whatever. Anyway, somebody's growing it now, I guess. Anyway, I don't smoke that stuff anymore. I worry about a suburban payment, and I don't even own the son of a bitch. Too much for me. All this high-grade pot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, pal.
You bet.
Good job.
Thank you.
Great fun. Thank you.
When I saw it's West Side Story, when I saw it's just a